Hi everyone, I am reading Serenade by T.K. Lawyer, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. A Labouche, followed by a bang, disturbed Kingsley Crandall's slumber. He jolted out of his overstuffed easy chair and growled at the invisible intruder, baring his sparkly white teeth in a sinister snarl. In an attempt to unveil the invader, he slashed at the curtains before shoving them aside, but saw nothing. Realizing his mistake, he hung his head. No one had entered his home. It was only the wind that disturbed his serenity. He blamed it all on the vivid nightmare that disturbed his reality. His muscles tensed in areas he hadn't used in months. His nerves were taut and sliced uncomfortably zings through the corded muscles of his stomach and up through his chest, ping-ponging within the shell of his skin, ratcheting up his blood pressure till it spiked to overload and making him grit his teeth. Someone kidnapped his girlfriend, and they were going to pay. This caused him to shake the dream cobwebs from his head. She wasn't his girl, at least not yet. Kingsley was in between romances and unwilling to try his hand at dating again. Why should he? He was no longer interested in temporary, not when he wanted a mate. The woman in his dream was definitely her. He recalled the fine details of her luscious hair, sexy mouth, and curvy form. When the male snatched her from his arms, he roared, ready to rip the kidnapper's throat out, but the male was too quick. Instead, Kingsley stood frozen, watching the amazing gift of a woman meant for him being ushered away from him. She screamed and called out, but he could only gaze at her with an intense longing that didn't dissipate until the loud bang of the window jarred him from his nightmare. Kingsley tapped his fingers across his chin while slumping into a straight-back chair behind his wooden desk. Options. There were too many of them. He sighed as he passed his hand across the top of the polished piece of furniture that always stirred pride up within him amidst the large library of books surrounding him. This is what he needed, a reprieve, albeit temporary, from the roaring images of the vivid dream he struggled to remember and couldn't forget. He was ready for something else, a diversion of sorts, something fun, different, and not girlfriend being taken away from him violence. Rarely were there days Kingsley was free from his mounting list of taxing chores, but today was one of them, and he had no idea what to do. He pondered over the 101 possibilities scrambling for top rank, running through his head, and settled on visiting a local but well-known spiritualist camp to attend a gallery reading. As part of his job, he was almost always in the spotlight, but he preferred dropping into the background to observe others. After a long, stressful week, a bit of people-watching was in order. Spiritual readings always gave him ample opportunity to watch others, that is, unless they called on you. A private person, Kingsley would have to pass on the opportunity. He was merely an observer to the event and not interested in having his life read before an audience. Besides, those kinds of things could be risky, especially for him. When it came to the spirit world, he wasn't sure what to make of it, or the gobbledygook. Some sputtered as casually as if they were speaking English. However, he believed in the paranormal. He had to. He had no other choice. Kingsley had a secret, but keeping it was tougher. Attending one of the reading sessions was likely a foolish endeavor, for one never knew what might happen amidst a crowd of humans discovering him in their presence. Still, he was fascinated with the concept of spirits and just about anything paranormal, as he was living proof of their existence. However, he was also wary of psychics and being outed. Keeping his secret intact was paramount to maintaining the quiet, peaceful life he craved. He clicked the button and shifted in the leather seat of his black Camaro, marveling again at the sleek beauty and perfection of the car as it molded comfortably to his body. The color was purposely chosen, as it blended well amidst the darkness of the night. He preferred concealment to standing out, especially since he didn't have that luxury under normal circumstances. As a paranormal being, the color white stood out like a sore thumb among the varied green and maple brown colors of his comfort zone. Blending in wasn't something that came naturally to him. He might as well have sported a neon pink collar with a target strapped across his chest during his nightly nature excursions beyond his backyard, for he shined just as brightly. Chuckling with the comical image of standing in a dense wooded forest adorned with dazzling hot pink, he'd likely surprise quite a few people showing up in the striking color, maybe enough to scare up a mate. Wouldn't that be an adventure? Would he be lucky enough to find the one female fated to him if he made such a grand, ridiculous gesture? Maybe he should try it once. His chuckle transitioned to a full-belly laugh at the preposterous but hilarious image rolling about in his mind. His heart, however, jolted with excitement and longing at the idea of finding his one true love. For at present, he was alone and single. He parked the car in front of the Camp's bookstore, his mind stuck on entertaining the idea of finding his intended. Kingsley tried but failed, never finding that one rare soul among the female population destined for him. If he was fortunate enough to locate her, he would do so through her delicate scent, a rare and raw concoction of pheromones made just for him. But the question remained, where was she? Wherever she hid, she did an excellent job in evading him. Instead, he found several bedmates to occupy his long nights and stave off the loneliness that often accompanied his endless search. If he could only find the one beauty his heart longed for, the empty space within him would fill to capacity. Once he captured her scent, however, there was no turning back. He knew she was out there, but where? Unfortunately, only heaven knew her location. He shifted the accelerator into park and almost hated getting out of the car. The interior's warmth and comfort lulled him, beckoning him to stay for a while, but one look at the digital clock reminded him he was running late, and he didn't want to be the last one in the building. Kingsley tore himself away and was soon pulling on one of the heavy double doors which led to the inside of the small chapel. Briefly, he imagined church members fleeing for their lives, hands flailing about, screaming at the top of their lungs, recognizing they were not among their own. Spiritualist or not, most people didn't like his true form. For the most part, his kind was misunderstood, and it was fear that drove humans to kill or even torture his population. He was not in the mood for people's misperceptions, and didn't have the time to go into lengthy explanations regarding what he was. For now, he would remain in his human disguise. Slipping through the doorway, he chose a chair toward the back of the church and waited patiently for the session to start. He didn't have to wait long. One of the members stood up and introduced the first psychic. Kingsley smiled as a woman beside him gleefully commented that she hoped she'd be called upon. She then chatted with a female on the opposite side of her, eyeing the psychic at the same time and trying to draw her attention to their table. Kingsley grumbled when her efforts proved successful, and the psychic stalked straight toward him instead of her, stating she felt a strong energy coming from him. She offered a free reading, which he politely declined amongst startled gasps sounding throughout the room. Amidst the flapping of mouths and stark surprises lingering in the small crowd surrounding him, he softened his rejection with a well-intentioned fib, stating he had received a reading recently and wanted to give another the opportunity. However, his heroic effort was met with humor. Laughter followed as the psychic made a comment which Kingsley grudgingly tolerated. He lowered his head to diffuse the situation and to attract attention away from himself. After what seemed a mini eternity, the psychic finally moved on. She strode toward another at the front of the room, when at that same moment the door in the back of the church opened. Kingsley drew in a deep breath of air. The weight of his body lightened, and immense joy filled the dusty caverns of his heart. His eyelids fluttered, and he sighed loudly. By gods, where is this scent coming from? He forced open his eyelids to take a good look at the intruder. Could it be? He waited so long. Kingsley's jaw dropped open, and his eyes widened as sunlight washed over the floor of tiles immediately in front of the exit door. While attention returned to the psychic talking animatedly with her new victim, Kingsley couldn't turn away from the slight interruption occurring at the back of the chapel. His relaxed mouth lengthened, lifting into a wide grin. The most incredible vision bounced off his startled irises, stopped his breathing, and then kick-started his heartbeat from a trot to full gallop, mimicking the steady hoofbeats of a champion race stallion. An alluring candy, sweet scent he never encountered before accompanied the siren, wafting through the doorway into the hallowed room. Kingsley whimpered, and then rolled his eyes heavenward. A heady, blissful sensation instantly whirled around in his brain, ping-ponging across the synapses, making everything pop and fire in sweet succession, like mortars during an Independence Day celebration. He grabbed the metal sides of his chair and struggled to remain seated. What was this delicious scent tantalizing him? His strong knees softened as he watched the woman walk quickly up the main aisle, her low heels click-clacking against the wooden floor despite her effort to sneak by unnoticed. Truly, there was nothing this woman could do to remain hidden. The savory dish brazenly passed by him, taunting and teasing his muscles to spring into action. He tamped down the urge to grab at her and toss her onto his lap, growling at anyone who dared defy his action. Instead, he reached down toward the metal handles jutting out from either side of his cushioned seat to steady himself from falling out of the chair, concerned if he didn't hold on tight that he'd tumble over her and pin her onto the ground in front of the entire congregation. Wouldn't that be a delightful experience? He grinned with the image peppering his impure thoughts. His breathing hinged near non-existence as his eyes alighted on the most radiantly beautiful face he'd ever encountered. He flared his nostrils with her delightful, lingering scent. This gorgeous female he hadn't known existed teased him by her mere existence and boldly sat in a chair only 3 seats from his. He groaned when her curvy bottom fluttered onto the seat. He willed himself to maintain his composure long enough to endure the hour-long agonizing session. Afterward, he was free to play, but unfortunately the readings had only just begun and there were 57 long, mind-numbing minutes left. Kingsley glanced over at the hands on the wall clock, willing the time to speed up while he readjusted himself in his seat. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The seconds ticked by slowly, thrumming steady beats into his head, as one psychic after another stepped up to the podium and picked out random people from the audience. Seconds turned into minutes, and minutes turned into 10. It took every bit of his reserve for him to remain seated when his wolf urged him to clear the path between them, throw her over his shoulder in a fireman's lift, and head to his car. He breathed out heavily as he strained to remain his composure in the crowded room. Oh no, he silently swore, her sensuous aroma wafting in his direction only a pounce away proved to be slow torture. Desire sped through his veins, images of leaping atop her, ripping the dress off her delectable body, and ravishing her fully among the astonished slack-jawed audience members intruded and quirked up a salacious smile. Overcome with ferocious need, his body shivered as he pictured the delightful scene. Parts of him, which despite the availability of willing females hadn't seen action in several months, came alive. As a virile male, Kingsley was never short of bedmates. However, his trysts became less frequent as the years droned by. He took a lover occasionally now, when his body desired intimate play with a soft, supple, warm female, or during the full moon when his needs and desires were intertwined as one. Still, no sex act would equate to mating with his one. It was this way with all his kind. When Kingsley finally mated, it would be forever. His eyelids twitched as he sensed the change happening within him. He knew the color of his irises darkened, for it always did when he was aroused, all because of one unaware female. The scintillating enchantress, sitting mere seconds from him, was a teenage boy's wet dream, walking in heels. His irises, likely the color of the darkest night, churned as his brain blasted erotic images of him slipping off her kitten heels and tearing to shreds the clothing that imposed a barrier between their joining. She was a vision, one he craved solely for his own sordid fantasies, each one ending with her open-mouthed moans. He closed his eyes on purpose, pretending to meditate or contemplate larger-than-life theories, when in reality he attempted to hide the truth of his true nature in case anyone glanced his way. If the audience knew one of his kind was in the room, chaos would ensue. Slapping his hands over his quivering nose, threatening to elongate into a full-fledged snout, he tried to hide the effect of the delicious siren that caused transformation to his physical features. Her essence wreaked havoc within him, stirring up the beast inside, and threatened his true self to break free. He breathed out a long exhale, inhaled slowly, and then blew out the air he withheld, once again until he couldn't take any more. Lifting from his seated position, he forced his legs to move toward the back of the church instead of what he wanted to do, which was slide over 3 chairs to sit next to the delicious morsel he itched to savor. One foot in front of the other, he wheeled himself forward, pacing away from her. Though his heart balked at his escape and his taut nerves protested each laborious step, he caught her gaze following him as he stalked through the endless hallway. Ignoring his rational mind urging him to ignore her, he glanced back at her to find her shy, away from him with a partial smile. Thanks.